This episode is not going to be pro-Trump or anti-Trump, but what I'm seeing is a lot of folks who aren't happy that Donald Trump was elected making plans to leave the United States. And in some cases, they're putting millions of dollars behind that decision, and yet they're doing it wrong. Today, I'm going to tell you the wrong way to leave the United States. As I always say, Nomad Capitalist doesn't judge. We help people from the left, we help people from the right. Our 5 magic words: go where you're treated best. And what I see is whenever someone's candidate doesn't win, they want to move overseas. First thing first, take a moment and reflect. Do I really want to make a move? What a lot of our clients have been doing in recent years is putting a plan B in place. I'm going to stay living in my country for now. I'm not sure how things will play out in the future. I want to be protected. Better years too early than a day too late. And so plan B could be a residence permit somewhere else. I can always go and live as a resident of that country, hopefully a country where I don't have to spend that much time to keep the residence active. It could be a citizenship. Now I have permanent privileges. I can live in that country anytime I want. And if it's a European Union passport, I can live in any of the European Union countries. So we see more folks getting citizenship by descent. My ancestors were Polish, but maybe one day when the kids are gone, I'll move to Spain, for example, as an EU citizen. And also, potentially having a home. I have homes all around the world, and I'm able to lever up and down that whatever happens in the world, whether it's a pandemic, a war, high taxes, something else, I can move to places, all of which I like, some more than others. What I'm seeing people doing in the United States is putting money into one country where they may not even be able to live there. Here's a headline from the Telegraph in the UK, which says, ultra-wealthy Democrats race to buy London Boltholes after Trump wins. Inquiries from American buyers who are seeking safety net second homes have doubled, says one real estate firm. Let me just tell you a couple things I don't like about this off the top, and then we'll go through the article. The first thing is, I think people are going, just by default, whenever their candidate loses, they're going to the knee-jerk reaction countries. We're going to talk about this more in the next week or so. If you want to hear more, just put "show me the right way to move." Leave a comment, "show me the right way to move," and we will talk about that more. What are those countries? It's Canada. People talk about Canada. There's this presumption that proximity means superiority. There's this presumption that proximity means you're guaranteed to get in. Canada and the UK are 2 of the hardest countries to immigrate to. Now, if you have a job and you can get a job in those countries, chances are that job is going to be lower paying than your job in the United States. The one thing I've said as a former US citizen is I gave up the chance to live in the United States and have one of the highest paying jobs in the world. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I don't need a job. I don't need a citizenship to allow me to have a job. And I could probably have some American company hire me living where I'm living if times ever got so tough that it got to that. So if you're an ultra-wealthy Democrat, it is going to be harder to live in a country like Canada or the UK. Now, we've talked about other countries. One of the countries on a Washington Post list was Ireland. Now, if you have any European Union country citizenship, you can live in Ireland. So you can go through our citizenship by descent process. We help clients go through their family tree. Do they qualify for a citizenship through that path? Some of them take years to get, by the way, so that's why you don't want to wait until your political candidate loses to get it. You just want to do it now. And if you're happy Trump won, do it now, because 4 years from now, who knows if your guy's in charge. And in some cases, 4 years is how long it will take you to get, let's say, your Italian passport. But if you have an EU member country passport, you can move to Ireland, which is more tax-friendly than the UK. That's the place I might be looking at, but it's not as well known. The only people who can live in the UK without getting a residence permit are British and Irish citizens. UK citizenship by descent is pretty stingy in terms of how far back you can go. If you're lucky enough to have Irish ancestors within the last 2 generations, you could get the Irish passport and then move to the UK. Otherwise, you need a residence permit. And I've met some very wealthy and very well-known people over the years who've said, my goodness, when we bought our home in Spain, we didn't realize as Americans we couldn't just stay here as long as we wanted. We didn't realize we can only stay here 90 days at a time. Go to the UK. If you fly in private, sometimes they don't even check you, but they know you're there. You get 180 days. That's what the Americans get when they go to the UK. So it's 180 days. You have to show yourself out by that time. But if you're not flying in private, you're going through the immigration channels at Heathrow or wherever else, they're going to ask you what you're doing here. And if your statement is, I'm here to move into my new mansion that I bought in London, yeah, you don't have a residence permit. You're supposed to be here as a tourist. Let me escort you back to a return flight. You need to have a residence permit. And the UK closed down pretty much all of the pathways that you can live there as a passive investor. There's one that remains, and it really doesn't work that well. And after a year or two of pitching it, a lot of people in our industry are now doing talks at industry seminars like, how to deal with the fact that it doesn't really work. So there's really no path to move to the UK unless you or your spouse or partner are a British or Irish citizen, or you get a job there. Those are my instant issues. Why is it we're choosing the UK? And why is it we think we can just move to whatever country that we want? And what I think is probably an easier option on par with the UK is Ireland. I've spent some time there. I wouldn't call myself a Democrat. I wouldn't call myself a far-right Republican. I'm politically homeless. I feel comfortable there. People are a bit more down to earth. As a guy from Ohio, I appreciate that. And so that's part of why I chose Ireland. Again, taxes in Ireland are better. If you're going to make a move somewhere, or if you're going to even, consider a move somewhere, why not make it a place where you can at least lower your tax bill? Or if you're a Democrat, you think the money in the U.S. is going to too much stuff you don't agree with, how about moving to a country where they don't spend $1 trillion almost every year on, let's call it defense, right? See, I told you I'm politically homeless. You want to expand your options outside of Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. These countries, the people don't really want more immigrants. If you can even get in, the passive investments are often $1 million or millions, or even in some cases like $10+ million. That's a lot to commit when there are places, let's say in continental Europe, you go to Portugal, invest €500,000 through the Golden Visa program. Now you can't use that to buy a home anymore, but you can make a passive investment that could make a return in the future. You can get on the track to citizenship without having to live there. Other countries like Greece, like Latvia have these programs. Spain is in the process of likely closing their program down, so they don't always last forever. But there are also programs where you don't even have to invest, like in Italy, like in France. Now, again, one of the things that we do for people is we help them legally reduce their taxes. Many clients these days don't want to pay zero. They're happy to pay something. And again, they want their money to go towards a worthy cause in their minds. But if you're going to go through all the hassle of moving, you might as well get something out of it. You might as well lower those taxes a little bit. And a place like Ireland, even Spain, Greece, those would allow you to do that. So there's a couple different things to think about. If you can get your hands on a European Union passport, either by descent, or if you go to Malta and you donate close to $1 million to them, you can get that passport in about 18 months. We help people do that. That's been very popular recently. Now you've got those privileges to live anywhere in the EU. Or if you don't have access to do either one of those, just get a golden visa or even just a regular residence permit in any number of European countries. You're probably going to get more of the values that you're looking for, as well as it's going to be a lot cheaper and a lot easier. But here's the article. Ultra-wealthy Democrats buying London Boltholes in London in the wake of Donald Trump's U.S. election win. His triumph has sparked a flurry of interest from ultra-wealthy Americans who want to buy UK property as a safety net because they disagree with the president's rhetoric. Now, there's two things I want you to consider here. Where you live and the values that come with that and the experience that you have and your level of stress and anxiety and happiness and belonging and all that, that's one thing. Where you put your money as a safety net is a different thing. What I've told people for years is the safety net is the place that's different from your country. One of the things that I've watched is whatever your opinion on the Russia-Ukraine war, the fact that a country like Switzerland decided to end its centuries-old policy of neutrality and take a side, that's concerning to me. There are other places that have stepped up and said, yeah, we'll be neutral. We realize that not every Russian person is a horrible person and should have all their money taken from them. Some of those Russians are actually against the war. And so you've seen Turkey. Okay, that may be a step too far for a lot of folks. You've seen the UAE. Those have opened up to be new safe havens. Singapore, not as much, but Singapore, I would say, is a better place to park money than the UK. By the way, have you dealt with European banks, including UK banks? Notoriously difficult. If you think it's going to be like walking into a Chase branch and opening an account, you're in for a rude awakening. It is difficult. Swiss banks in particular, some of the most, it's almost impossible. British banks, including in the territories like Gibraltar, not much better. So if I'm looking to park money, cash, equity somewhere, I'd open a bank or brokerage account somewhere else. If I'm an American, I've got to report that in a form that I send to the Treasury every year. If I'm looking to buy property every year, sure, that property could be in a place where I want to live. But how are you going to use your property in the UK if you don't have a residence permit to live there unless you are a British or Irish citizen or you're married to one? How are you going to do that? You're not going to be able to. And if you think you're going to be able to come in and out of the UK all you want, well, I remember a client, guy was British, his wife was not. She did not, because they did not live in the UK, but they frequently visited. She did not get a UK residence permit. She would not have been able to maintain it because they weren't there long enough. The UK, Canada, these are countries they actually want you to live there, unlike, let's say, a golden visa in Europe where you can kind of keep it in your back pocket. Live there if you want, don't live there if you don't want. But she would come into the UK as a tourist on his frequent visits to the country. I don't know, 6 times a year kind of thing. They gave her hell for it. These English-speaking countries are some of the most difficult countries at the border. You come to Malaysia, they look at your passport, great, here's your 90 days, goodbye. You go to a country like Serbia, I see sometimes they see a US or Canadian passport, just go. There's no record of them even entering the country, they could care less. The UK, not like that. And again, even if you fly in private, they don't check you. There's still a record somewhere. If you're still there past the time, they'll find you, believe me. And by the way, they'll also send you a tax bill, HMRC will. I have seen that happen to people who visit too often. So, to visit your home, go to the UK, and how long are you going to stay? I'm here for the full 180 days. I've got a home that I'm going to be living in and running my business from. See how that works for you. So that's why I would not do it. Other folks are looking for rental properties with budgets of up to 70,000 euros a month. Again, what is the residence process? Whether you watch TV shows, oh, Carrie just moved to Paris, or again, whether you talk to some very successful people, Americans have this view they can just go wherever they want. And you can visa-free as a tourist. You want to come to Malaysia to Nomad Capitalist Live, our 4-day event, where we're going to teach you about the kind of places that I think are better for you to go, residence permits, passports, homes, all that. You can come and you can spend 90 days. They're not going to bother you. Get your health care down the street at Prince Court Medical Center. Spend 90 days. You do that, go to the UK, it's not going to be as easy, and that's fine. They're worried about people overstaying their visas. They're worried about, hey, we don't just need the money. Fine. For whatever, that's how they run their country, but you cannot just pop in and out. So inquiries from Americans are up by 30% on the year. They've doubled since Trump got elected. London, one gentleman said, has always been seen as a safe haven, but really even more so now with a more stable government that leans to the left. There's a lot of governments that lean to the left. Here's I think what's better than a left-wing government if you're a left-wing person, or a right-wing government if you're a right-wing person, is a neutral government you don't care about and that doesn't impact your life. Find a country that has the values that you want. If you're a right-winger, I don't want a country that's woke. Plenty of countries like that. People on the right wing don't think I'm upset enough about woke. I'm not surrounded by it to even really know that much about it or how bad it is. I don't see it in my life. If you're a left-winger, what is it that's important to you? People were upset over Roe v. Wade being overturned, gay marriage, whatever it is that you want. Make a list. If you come to us at nomadcapitalist.com/apply and that's your thing, hey, I have to have a country that is pro-gay marriage. Okay, here's X number of countries, and then let's go through the granular points of each of them and see which one, we filter down to, or which ones we filter down to. But once you meet some of those criteria, why are we so focused on living in a place where the politics align? Now listen, the UK will probably always be a bit more left-leaning just because they have universal health care. Once that's in, you don't get rid of it. There's certain social things they have that are probably always going to be a bit more left-leaning than the US. Just the culture in most of Europe in general, certainly Western Europe, hews more to the left. That said, you are seeing some very far-right parties making progress in some places in Europe. And so my answer to moving for politics is move for values, not for politics. What do the people generally agree on? What is the culture? And if they generally agree with you in the culture, then you'll realize, hey, no matter who's in office, I will be fine. Let me give an example of somewhere I was recently. I was in Oman. You're tired of people at each other's throats? You're tired of folks you don't agree with? these are some of the kindest people. You know what their government is? It's a monarchy. And the Sultan that passed away a couple years ago, who took the place from being nothing to being a great country with a lot going on, a lot going for it, they love that guy. They love the current Sultan. They feel he's doing great stuff for the country. And whether you like that system of government or not, no one's at each other's throat there. People are nice and kind. Yeah, they prefer if you wear long pants rather than shorts, but you know what? When you're in the gated community, people do what they're going to do. People get along. I almost want you to consider something like that. We're going to be showing you Live Like a King, Oman, coming up in January. We did a whole episode on luxury living there and all what it is. If you've got a family, one thing people said time and time again, what a great place for families, just to be away from the chaos of the world. The taxes are a heck of a lot lower too. And so what they're saying in London at the same time is that people saw Trump as an aberration. The writing was on the wall. Now they'll be pushing the button. You know, if you live in the Western world, we talk to a lot of folks who are worried about their taxes going up. And I think the taxes will have to go up long term in the US. And I've told people to be prepared for that. I've told people to be prepared for fewer freedoms. The trend in Gen Z is to take away freedoms. There's freedoms, there's things they don't believe in, that you should be free anymore. And I've said better years too early than a day too late. If you're waiting for Trump to literally be elected, you're too late. Now, I'm happy to help you, and there's plenty of things you can do, but I don't want you to make a rushed decision and sink millions of dollars into a property you may not even be able to visit without having a plan. And before you think, oh, who would do that? Literally met people with $100 million and up who did not realize they could not just simply move to any country that they wanted to. So I'm happy to help you get a second passport if you're able to get that in some way to live in a country. Again, the UK is kind of unique because post-Brexit, Irish and British, that's it. But my suggestion would be look at the broader continent of Europe, potentially look at places in South America. You want a bolt hole. You want a real bolt hole against things like world wars and nuclear and lots of things. How about Uruguay? How about Chile? Those are pretty stable places. I mean, if you're willing to pay a bit more tax in the long run, Chile is not a low tax place. Uruguay is a much better tax deal. Those are stable places, and yet they have some of the certain social benefits that you might appreciate. There's places in Asia that could work. They're not as developed, but they could work. And they share your values. Thailand, perhaps, comes to mind. And so let's look outside of the usual suspects. Let's look even outside of places that speak English. There's enclaves in non-English speaking countries where they speak English. The Netherlands, another option, if taxes aren't a concern for you. Dutch-American Friendship Treaty, you could live there. So that's what I would be doing. By the way, property is going to be cheaper even in Amsterdam. Was just there, was just looking at property. Actually was surprised how affordable it is. I mean, not compared to Kuala Lumpur, but compared to London. Property in Amsterdam is actually not that bad. Beautiful places along the canal you can buy. That's going to be a lot easier to access with a European passport or even just getting a residence permit in their country. So continental Europe to me is superior. If I'm looking to have a place as a bolt hole for assets in a place that I want to live, yeah, get a home. I own homes around the world. There's a strategic purpose and a human purpose to each one of them. And yet if I'm going to park assets because I'm afraid of Trump, I'd be more afraid of the US political system in general and everything it does to countries all around the world. All the sanctions. A lot of countries are tired of the US. And they're going to shut Americans out, or they're going to do stuff to push back. I'd rather have my assets in neutral places other than the homes that I live in. So that's my plan to escape the US. But let's not do it to panic. Let's not do it and waste millions of dollars and figure out our plan doesn't work. And let's look, not just 4 years ahead, but decades ahead. Because no matter which side you're on, you're going to be in power sometimes and out of power other times. I want you to be prepared that no matter what happens in the country you're in or wherever you go, you, your family, your freedom, and your finances are all safe.